Om Stapakaya ca dharmasya sarvadharmasvarupine Stapakaya ca dharmasya sarvadharmasvarupine Avatara Varishtaya Ramakrishna Te Namah Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorama Mritangamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let us offer our salutations to Sri Ramakrishna, the embodiment of all religions, the Supreme God incarnate. Let us pray to Him to lead us from the unreal to the real, to lead us from the darkness of ignorance to the light of knowledge, to lead us from death to immortality. Today's topic I have chosen, eliminating wisdom of Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna is the greatest scientist in the field of spirituality. One may call him a sage or a mystic of modern age or a man of God or God incarnate, according to one's liking, and everyone would be correct in his or her own way of understanding Sri Ramakrishna. This is because Sri Ramakrishna encompasses every aspect of religion and mysticism in his life and teachings. Every soul can take something from this perennial fountain of spirituality and nourish his or her heart with purity, holiness and selflessness. Sri Ramakrishna was the most rational mystic. With scientific precision, he put forward in most simple terms, as parables and stories, the eternal truth regarding God and God realization. Like a scientist in the field of other physical sciences, Sri Ramakrishna talked about God only after directly experiencing the reality of God. He did not simply theorize or put forward philosophical conjectures to claim the divinity of each soul, but actually realized this truth, and that the true nature of man is divine consciousness. This is most astounding revelation of Sri Ramakrishna. Swami Vivekananda, of such mind of clarity and wisdom, he was hankering after the realization of the truth. But he was a little confused whether it is possible for any person to realize God in this life itself, or simply it's a fiction. So he explored in all sincerity whether anybody got that realization. Finally, fortunately, he came to Sri Ramakrishna. At the first meeting itself, he was completely convinced of the reality of the truth, the existence of God, and the glory of the human soul. When he asked Sri Ramakrishna directly whether he had seen God, straight away came the reply, "Yes, I have seen." And he said further, "You can also see him. But who really wants God? They simply talk about God. But those who really hanker after him, surely they will get him." So, that is Sri Ramakrishna, who experimented on his life and who practiced religion in all sincerity and devotion, practicing all disciplines required, and finally arrived at the truth. It is universal truth. Anybody in this world can realize the divinity. Only one should fulfill proper conditions. Unless the mind is purified, unless one is free from egoism, unless one's mind is free from all impurities, certainly one will not realize God. Anyway, so he proclaimed the truth that the true nature of man is divine consciousness. This intuitive knowledge was based on his experience during various spiritual practices he undertook in his young age. These practices included all traditional Hindu disciplines and also sadhana of Muslim and Christian faith. During these spiritual practices, Sri Ramakrishna got established in the highest non-dual consciousness and realized the same truth about the reality. That is, there is only one and only one reality of truth, which is called as Brahman or God. His flights in the divine states of altered consciousness would have been beyond description had Sri Ramakrishna himself not told his experiences to his disciples. These included one Mr. M, who chronicled Sri Ramakrishna's life, sayings and experiences during the period 1882 to 1886 as a Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. The other one, the great Swami Vivekananda, made the Vedantic teachings of Sri Ramakrishna broadcast to both the East and the West. The holy Ganges has carried spiritual aspirations of millions of Hindus to the ocean of bliss. She has nourished and nurtured many divine souls of past ages down to Sri Ramakrishna of the present age, and ferried thousands of scorched souls across the ocean of worldliness. Sri Ramakrishna was the epitome of spirituality. Humanity has not yet recognized the true import of the descent of this rare soul on the earth. It has become more human and spiritual on 18th February 1836 with the advent of this noble soul on this earth. His special mission as God incarnate in today's world of strife and strike, terrorism and fanaticism, poverty and hunger, greed and corruption, will be recognized in due course of time. Sri Krishna, Lord Buddha, Jesus Christ also went largely unrecognized during their lifetime. But a wave of spirituality was generated decades and centuries after them to lift the masses from ignorance and dreariness of mundane existence to the light of divinity. The same phenomenon, much stronger and nobler, is being witnessed by today as an aftermath of spiritual power unleashed by Sri Ramakrishna. Swami Vivekananda and the Holy Mother, Sri Sharda Devi. The fortunate ones will drink the nectar from this source of eternal bliss and will feel nourished forever. The ignorant will be washed clean of their mental dirt to get attracted to this powerful magnet in times to come. This time, nobody will be left untouched. This powerful current of divinity will affect certain degrees of change in every mind. The alert will grab the opportunity to go beyond greed, corruption, perversions, sense pleasures, and egotism. Sri Ramakrishna taught no creed or dogma. His only concern was man's uplift. According to him, there is infinite moral and spiritual potential in man. To develop that potential is man's foremost duty in life. He taught man to strive to develop that potential without wasting time over sense pleasures or religious quibbling. Religions are like so many paths leading to the same goal. The goal is truth, God. Man reaches his religious goal when he attains his highest moral development. Sri Ramakrishna, through his most wonderful, fascinating, powerful teachings, has revealed his wisdom, illuminating wisdom. He says, God is both personal and impersonal. It is difficult to conceive an impersonal God. So to begin with, God has to be thought of as a person. Can anyone think of the white color without thinking of a white object? One can look at the morning sun, but not at the midday sun. Similarly, when God is manifest in a person, we know what God is like. Otherwise, God is impersonal and beyond thought and speech. Then he says, how one should be in this world. He said, be in the world, but not of it. Perform your duties as well as you can, but do not count too much upon the fruits of your action. Rather, surrender them to God. Try to feel as if you are only a tool in the hands of God. Religion is an experience. It makes no sense unless its truths are experienced. Is your thirst satisfied unless you drink water when you are thirsty? God is everywhere, but he is most manifest in man. So serve man as God. That is as good as serving, worshipping God himself. Like stars in the daylight, God is invisible. Can you therefore say that there are no stars in the sky during the day? O man, because you can't find God in the days of your ignorance, say not that there is no God. A man thickly embedded in Maya is like a piece of iron thickly embedded in mud. Just like the iron with mud is unmoved by the power of the magnet, so also the man is unaffected by the Lord. When the mud is washed away with water, it frees the iron. Likewise, when Maya is washed away with prayer, man is automatically attracted to God. To explain God after merely reading the scriptures is like explaining a city after seeing it on a map. A meteorological report may forecast heavy rainfall, but you can't squeeze a single drop from the paper on which the report is written. So also, many good sayings are found in holy books, but merely reading them won't make you spiritually wise. An unbaked cake of flour sizzles loudly when put it in heated oil. The more it is fried, the less the noise. When it is fully fried, the noise ceases altogether. Likewise, when a man has a little knowledge, he goes about talking and preaching. A truly wise man doesn't make a vain display of his wisdom. Young bamboo bends easily, while full-grown bamboo breaks when bent with force. Likewise, young minds bend easily towards spiritual thoughts, as their minds has not yet stored up with contamination. All women are parts of the Blessed Mother and should be looked upon as mothers. A spiritual aspirant may live in the world, but the world should not live in his mind. He gives the example, a boat may stay in water, but water should not stay in the boat. Live like a lotus leaf in water, or like a mud fish in the marsh. A spiritual person lives in the material world without being obsessed with it. Sri Ramakrishna gives an example. Milk poured into water mixes readily with it. When converted into butter, it no longer gets mixes but floats on top. Do all your duties, but keep your mind on God. Live with all family, children, father, mother. Serve them. Serve them as if they were very dear to you. But know in your heart of hearts, they don't really belong to you. There is nothing wrong in your being in the world, but you must direct your mind towards God. Otherwise, you will not succeed. Do your duty with one hand and with the other hold to God. After the duty is over, you will hold to God with both hands. Vision of God is obtained when the mind is perfectly tranquil. When the sea of one's mind is agitated by the waves of desires, it can't reflect God. A kite with a fish in its beak was chased by a large number of crows, and screaming kites pecking at it and trying to snatch away the fish. Wherever it went, the flock of birds followed it. Tired of the chase, the kite threw away the fish. Instantly the flock veered off in the direction of the fish. The kite now sat calm and undisturbed upon the branch of a tree. As long as a man does not cast aside the burden of worldly desires, he cannot be at peace within himself. So as long as one cherishes desires, they keep on bothering him now and then. One cannot get rid of botherations unless one tries to free oneself from disturbing desires. Ceremonies and rituals are useful up to a certain point for the growth of spiritual thoughts. However, they are not of use for him who has realized the highest truth, namely God. Just as the oyster shell that contains a precious pearl is in itself a very little value, but is essential for the growth of the pearl. To acquire the power of concentration, a person must begin by fixing the mind on God with form. Only then can he meditate on the formless. Once the mind has been trained to focus on an idol, it is easy for it to focus on the formless. A marksman learns to shoot by first aiming at big objects. As he gets more skilled in shooting, he targets smaller and smaller objects. A man was sitting on the bank of a stream all alone, fishing it. He was sitting there for fishing. It was getting late, and still he had got no fish. After a while, the float on his line began to move. Now and then, its tip touched the water. The fisherman was holding the line tight in his hands, ready to pull it up. Just at that time, somebody came walking by on the road above the banks of the stream. He asked a question, "Sir, can you tell me where the letterman live? It is somewhere around here." That fellow was asking this man. But there was no reply from the fisherman, because he was just on the verge of pulling up his rod. There seemed to be business at the end of the line. Again and again the traveler said in a louder voice, "Sir, can you tell me where the letterman live?" But the man fishing in the stream was unconscious of everything around him. His hands were trembling, his eyes fixed on the float, the picture of a fine fish about to come up, vivid in his mind. "This man must be stone deaf," said the traveler to himself, very much annoyed, and so he started walking on the road again. After he had gone quite a way, it happened that the fisherman's float sank under the water, and with one pull of the rod he landed a good-sized fish. Wiping the sweat from his brow, it was a hot day, he now turned and shouted after the visitor, "Well, hey, come here, listen." But the man would not even turn his face. After much shouting, however, he did come back. He said to the fisherman, "Why are you shouting at me? What did you ask me about?" Said the fisherman. "Why? I repeated my question so many times, and here you are asking me to repeat it again." The fisherman replied, "At that time, a fish was after my bait, so I didn't hear a word of what you said." Sri Ramakrishna tells us that this is the kind of single-mindedness we must have in meditation. We must become completely absorbed. After the 14 years of hard penance, a man acquired the supernatural power to walk on the water. When he displayed of it, his brother rebuked him. "What you have accomplished in 14 years, ordinary men can do by paying a few pennies to the boatman." Beautiful. See how in all his teaching tremendous wisdom is embedded. Tremendous wisdom. There are several bathing banks or ghats on a large river. A person goes to whichever ghat he pleases, but reaches the same water. There is no point in quarreling over the merits of the various ghats. Every religion of the world is like a ghat. Each has its own plus and minus points, and each leads to the water of eternal bliss. The one and the same water is called by different names in different languages. So the one Satchidananda, existence, consciousness, bliss, is invoked by some as Allah, by some as Hari, and by some others as Jesus. But it is the same God consciousness everybody is referring to. Two persons were hotly disputing over the color of a chameleon they had seen on a tree. One said that it was red. The other asserted, "No, it is not red, it was blue." Unable to resolve the difference, they went to a man who lived under that tree and had watched the chameleon in all its phases. He knew that the chameleon constantly changes color, so he agreed with both the men, for the chameleon was red as well as blue. Likewise, a devotee who has seen God only in one aspect knows that aspect alone. None but he who has seen him in manifold aspects can say, all these forms are of the one God, for God is multiformed. God is both formless and with form, and infinite are his forms. So there need not be any dispute with regards to God. Then Sri Ramakrishna says, Viveka and Vairagya, discrimination and dispassion, are the two purifying agents in our life. Put a purifying agent like alum into a vessel of muddy water and see how impurities settle down at the bottom, making the water clear again. Similarly, Viveka and Vairagya help our restless senses to settle down and clear our minds of tensions and anxieties. A person who is fond of fishing first gathers detailed information about a pond, the type of fish it contains, and the most suitable bait to catch them. He then goes to the pond with his fishing rod and bait and waits there patiently until he gets an attractive catch. Similarly, a spiritual aspirant should first gain knowledge from scriptures and spiritual masters. He should try to seek God with the bait of faith and devotion, with his mind as the fishing rod. With unceasing patience, he must wait for the fullness of time. Only then will he realize the divine. Once a disciple asked his guru, Master, when shall I see God? Then Guru took his disciple to the sea and immersed his head in water. After some time he released his head and asked, how did you feel? Desperate for breath, replied the devotee. And hearing the Guru said, you shall see God when you are desperate for him as you were for breath. And about love also, Sri Ramakrishna has given most wonderful thoughts. Love can be unselfish, reciprocal, and selfish. Three varieties: unselfish, reciprocal, and selfish. The unselfish lover seeks only the welfare of his beloved, even at the cost of personal hardship and pain. In reciprocal love, the lover desires happiness both for himself and his beloved. When love is selfish, the lover cares only for his own happiness. Sri Ramakrishna tells another parable. 4 blind men went out to see an elephant. One touched the leg of the elephant and said, "Oh, the elephant is like a pillar." All these 4 people are blind people. The second one touched the trunk and said, "Oh, the elephant is like a thick club." The third one touched the belly and said, "The elephant is like a big wall." The fourth one touched the ears and said, "The elephant is like a big winnowing basket." Thus they began to dispute hotly among themselves as to the shape of the elephant. A passer-by, seeing them thus quarreling, said, "What is it you are disputing about?" They told him everything and asked him to arbitrate. The man said, "None of you has seen the elephant." The elephant is not like a pillar. Its legs are like pillars. It is not like a winnowing basket. Its ears are like winnowing baskets. It is not like a club. Its trunk is like a club. The elephant is a combination of all these: legs, ears, belly, trunk, and so on. In the same manner, those who quarrel about the nature of God have each seen only one aspect of the deity. A teacher once told his disciple that everything that exists is God. The disciple took this literally without pondering on true spirit behind it. One day, while passing through a street, he came across an elephant. Its mahout shouted at the disciple to move out of the way of the elephant. The disciple, however, argued to himself, "Why should I move away? I am God and so is the elephant. What fear has God from himself?" Reflecting thus, he did not move. So the elephant caught hold of him by its trunk and dashed him aside. Severely hurt, he went back to his teacher and related the whole story. The teacher said, "Okay, so you are God and so is the elephant. But God, in the shape of the mahout, warned you from above. Why did not pay heed to his warning?" About our will and its limitation, Sri Ramakrishna has revealed his wisdom. Once finding it difficult to reconcile the contradiction of man's free will and the preordained destiny or God's grace, two disciples of the Master went to him for a solution. Master said, "Our will is tied to the Lord's like the cow to its tether. Like the cow, we have a certain amount of freedom within a prescribed circle. So man thinks his will is free, but know that his will is dependent on the Lord's. One thing I would like to add," said he, "free will doesn't necessarily mean you can slack. For if you don't work hard to utilize amount of strength he has given to you, he never gives more. So self-exertion is essential to become fit for the grace of God." If you hurt anyone, you are hurting God. Sri Ramakrishna tells this in this gospel. Ganesha, son of Shiva, once happened to scratch a cat with his nail. When he went home, he noticed a scratch on the cheek of his divine mother, Parvati. Seeing this, he asked, "Mother, how did you get that ugly scar on your cheek?" The Mother of the Universe said, "This is the work of your hand. It is a scratch of your nail." Ganesh was wondered, "How is it? How is it, Mother? I don't remember having scratched you any time." "Darling, have you forgotten that you scratched a cat this morning?" "Yes, I did scratch a cat, but how did your cheek get the scar?" The mother answered fondly, "Dear child, nothing exists in this world but myself. The whole creation is myself. Whomsoever you hurt me." How nicely Sri Ramakrishna has explained the teaching. Inner peace comes from discarding desires. So that we have already dealt with, how that kite with a fish was running helter-skelter. Finally, when the fish was dropped, it was rest in peace. As long as a man doesn't cast aside the burden of worldly desires, he can't be at peace with himself. You have built up desires, You have got so many ambitions to accomplish, and how can you say you can be free from stress and strain? So you create your own stress and strain. Afterwards you grumble over it. That won't do. So you have to be selective, not multiplying desires, but you must be able to do desires as much as you can handle them. And Sri Ramakrishna was emphatic on one more teaching, that is, follow one faith. There are many roads leading to Calcutta. One day, Mr. Doubtful started from his home in a distant village to go to the metropolis. He asked a man on the road which the shortest route to Calcutta was. The man indicated a road, and Mr. Doubtful set off. After going a little way, he met another man who advised him to turn back and follow a different route. Again, Mr. Doubtful did what the man advised. A little later, he met yet another traveller instantly, who pointed out yet another road to Calcutta, whichever doubtful person followed. Thus, Mr. Doubtful made no real progress. All he did was spend the whole day changing roads. This is why it is always best to select and follow just one road, be it to a city or to God. Another example Sri Ramakrishna gives. A man decided to sink a well. He dug a few feet, but did not find any trace of water. He gave up that site and started on another spot. There he dug even deeper, but still could not find any water. So he picked yet another site, and then the fourth and the fifth. At last he gave up in utter frustration. Had he pursued with the first site alone, he would surely have struck water, perhaps with half the effort. It is exactly the same case with one who continually changes faith. Spirituality automatically leads to humility. When a flower develops into a fruit, the petals drop off on its own. When one becomes spiritual, the ego vanishes gradually on its own. A tree laden with fruits always bends low. Humility is a sign of greatness. When concentrating on God, be humble and don't allow ego to scatter your focus. For if you wish to thread a needle, don't you make the thread pointed by getting rid of all protruding fibers? And about prayer, Sri Ramakrishna says, of no avail is the prayer of a man who prays, "These are all thine, O Lord," and at the same time thinks of various possessions as his. In prayer, let there be a harmony between your thought and your speech. So Sri Ramakrishna has given all these instructions so that we live the life of spirituality in a proper way. There should not be any confusion in our ideal, in our choosing the path, and in following disciplines. Every step is important. Fixing the goal is very important. First, the aspiration should be there to realize the truth. Then only you can fix the goal properly. Then strong determination should be there to pursue the path. And then you must be ready to undergo disciplines without any compromise. When you take all these steps, you are sure to realize the truth in this very life itself. Effects of spiritual discourses. A nail cannot be driven into a stone, but it enters easily into the earth. So, the advice of a spiritual master has no effect on a non-believer, but it goes deep into the heart of a believer. A spring cushion is pressed down when one sits upon it, but soon resumes shape when the pressure is removed. Likewise, most men are full of noble sentiment when they hear a spiritual discourse, all of which are promptly forgotten when the routine of daily life takes over. Iron appears red hot in the furnace, but becomes black soon after it is taken out. In the same way, men are bursting with spirituality when they are in a temple or in the company of a spiritual master. As soon as they come out, the flood of spiritual thoughts within them subsides. So, one should be always aware of his spiritual goal, and he must be very sincere in following the spiritual path. So Sri Ramakrishna finally says, man without ego is a true servant of God. When a man has feelings of I and mine, he is separated from God. Just like when a stick is placed on the surface of water, it appears divided. The stick is the I, aham. Remove the stick and the water is once again undivided. I and mine are signs of ignorance. Thou and thine are the signs of knowledge. A person who has vanquished his ego says, O Lord, thou art the doer. I am a mere instrument in thy hands. I do whatever you make me do. All this is your glory. I have only the right to serve as per your command. The Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna is full of wisdom, illuminating wisdom of Sri Ramakrishna. Every page has got spiritual message for us to follow. So reading Gospel, understanding the teachings, assimilating them, practicing them, you will really be able to experience a glimpse of peace and happiness in your mind. So as I said in the beginning, one must have true aspiration, then only all these things will work. If you don't aspire for the realization of truth, you will not be inclined to even read the book. You don't want to even to know about things. So, everything has to go through some kind of experience. Every life is an experience, and experience comes to us to show the path. So we should learn through experience, and circumstances come as signals. So we must heed to the signals. So you have to be alert when you are walking in the street. So spiritual journey is like that. One has to be ever watchful. So in Vedanta they say, wake up from the waking state. So even this waking state is also a state of ignorance. When you realize the truth, then you will see everything is nothing but God, and everything is only like a dream. A Jnani, a man of knowledge, experiences this truth. So, As long as the ignorance is in our mind, so long we cannot be free from suffering. We may pass through many lives, but still we cannot get rid of suffering unless we make efforts positively to get rid of them. So, taking spiritual path in all earnestness and following the teachings of the spiritual masters with strong determination, we can certainly make our life meaningful. And so, the human life is an opportunity given to us by the invisible Divine Supreme, so that we can work out ourselves towards freedom. But we don't use it properly, then so all things happen because of our own actions, our own thinking, our own dealing, and our own reaction. So, if we understand this truth and become aware of the reality, then certainly we will be purified by this illuminating wisdom of Sri Ramakrishna. So, please read Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna every day and try to understand the spirituality in its real sense of the term, without any fanaticism or dogmatism. Sri Ramakrishna always stresses on practicality. Be practical. That's all. So, whatever God's form you may take, you may choose, be sincere and practical, and everything will be taken care of by itself. Sri Ramakrishna has shown through his example that one can work out one's realization by hard spiritual disciplines. So let us all try to be practical in our spiritual ways, and in course of time mind gets purified, and when we get into the realization of the truth, and we will be experiencing immense peace and joy. Thank you very much. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat. May the Lord protect us. May He nourish us. May we not be fruitful and enlightened. May we not hate each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.